I'll be sitting in a chair, but if you prefer to sit on the floor, that's absolutely fine. What we're going to do to start is we're going to just begin a breathing practice of kind of connecting through what I call the center channel. The center channel, if you could imagine, there was a little hollow tube that went from the crown of your head, and you know, to find the crown of your head, usually if you just kind of put your fingers around the top of your head, and you'll feel that little divot that was once your fontanelle when you were a baby, where the seams of your skull were still open. So that's a really important part of our bodies. It kind of represents this connection to being birthed and manifested in this life. So you find that little divot, and then just begin to imagine a straight hollow tube going from there to the space between your eyes, behind your eyes and between your ears, through the center of your throat, down into the center of your heart. And then the heart comes to a point, and then you continue through that point of your heart down through the center of your lower abdomen area, and this will be just to the front of your spine. So it's not so much your spine, it's a space just in front of the spine, all the way down to the space just in front of your tailbone. And we're going to try to make that tube as long and as supported as possible. Once we find that length and that sense of containment around that tube, we're going to begin to breathe, and we're just going to start with breathing into the top. So from your nose, if you're able to breathe through your nose, sealing the lips if that feels comfortable to you. But if you feel like you have a stuffy nose and you need to breathe through your mouth, that's absolutely fine. It's just the nose focuses the breath more back to that space at the top of the tube behind your eyes. So that's where the sinus cavities are. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable about doing that, and just allowing the breath to flow in and out at this top space. So you start to just associate from the crown of the head where our fingers were to the space between your ears and behind your eyes. Allow your mind to clear. And as you start to just focus on the sense of presence and the flow of your breath, we're going to just come and follow that breath now a little deeper as it moves behind your mouth, towards the back of your throat, and into the top of your chest. So now just follow it through there. And in the throat, there's a capacity to just make a slight contraction so you can really tune into the breath moving through the throat. So a little ujjayi breath. And just feel it moving in and out, up and down through that space. And then from there, continue to follow the breath. Now it's a little harder to follow it as it moves into the chest because the air actually begins to expand out to either side of the heart. But your focus is right through the center of the heart. Imagine that tube continuing through the center of your heart to the base of the heart. And here we can connect again to the breath because the diaphragm is actually moving and pulling on that point at the tip of the heart. So again, we're feeling this movement in and out, up and down through that center channel. And then we'll continue to follow that idea of the center channel, that breath moving continually down as we inhale towards the base of the spine. And you might feel the belly slightly expand. And then as you exhale, there's a slight contraction of the belly. And as it contracts, the diaphragm moves up, the air flow moves up until it finally moves out. We'll just take about 5 more breaths like that, just feeling the breath along this whole center channel. And breath is really universally felt in our bodies because we are whole and we are this pressurized bubble of being that moves around in the earth. So we're gonna play a little bit with expanding that breath all the way down in through the pelvic floor into the inner thighs. And this is where I really like to have like a squishy ball or a soft towel, something that you can place between your knees and hold it there, but not necessarily have to hold it tight. So what we're going to do is, now we've got this idea of the center channel within us, and the breath is moving down as we inhale, and it's moving all the way down into the base of our spine. And then as we exhale, there's this contraction and moving up. And we're going to add kind of squeezing and releasing the ball. So as you inhale, we want to create space. So the ball is soft, we're not squeezing it. And then as you exhale, you're going to begin by squeezing the ball gently, moving that awareness from the inner thighs to the pelvic floor, and then continue the slow exhale up through the channel and out. So inhale will soften and open. Exhale will support and gently squeeze all the way up and out. So playing with that and just seeing if we can begin to feel this universal movement of breath that becomes simply energetics, small, subtle movements throughout our whole body. And take maybe one or two more of these. We're going to add a little bit more now movement to this, and I'll be turning sideways. You don't have to turn sideways. I'm just turning a little bit at an angle so you can see. But now what I'm going to do is, as I inhale, I'm going to arch my back slightly, just slightly. My ball is still between my knees and it's not being squeezed. And then as I exhale, I'm going to start with the knees, move up. Now there's a little bit more squeeze of the belly as I really kind of squish and squeeze the breath out of me. And I end with the head movement tilting forward and my back rounds. So inhale, soften, open, draw the breath fully down. Exhale, gently squeeze, press the breath fully up. So we're getting some spinal movement in. Maybe you can begin to feel the shoulders becoming a part of this breath, the head and neck becoming a part of this breath. So again, we're just becoming more and more universal in our breath awareness, but also in the capacity to kind of know what's the position of our body in space. And we're going to take one or two more of these. Your pace. Notice what you feel. And as you finish this last one and exhale, settle just in that neutral aligned stance where, again, the awareness of that center tube is vertical in space, in gravity. It's like a little flagpole right inside of you. We're going to just open up the side bodies just a little bit. I'm leaving the ball between my knees. If it bothers you, you can drop it, but it's just giving me just a little bit of awareness of how I'm sitting in the chair and staying a little firm. I'm going to take one hand to the chair or to the floor. The other arm's going to reach up. We're going to take a nice big stretch up and over. And as we stretch up and over, we're just opening up our side body. And we're just going to take some nice breaths here and feel the movement of the breath in the ribs. And we're going to just change our arm position just a little bit. We're bringing it a little bit forward and kind of just rotating so your thumb is kind of hitchhiking up, maybe a little forward. Maybe feel the stretch of your breath as it comes around the back of your shoulder. Remembering not to alter your seat. Try to stay firm in your chair. Let the breath be around the ribs and shoulders. We're going to come back up alongside the ear, and then we're going to bring that arm around behind us. And again, I'm kind of taking a little rotation. Now I'm hitchhiking the thumb back And just giving a little more stretch to the front of the armpit. And again, a few breaths, just noticing that this breath can be felt all the way down the arm. And then just bringing that arm back to resting in your lap. Noticing if you feel a difference between the two sides. We'll shift, bring the hand down to the chair or to the floor for support. The other arm just starts up right alongside the ear. We take this nice big side bend, and we just experience the arm directly under the arm. And a few breaths. And you can absolutely play with that movement of the breath with the ball. How much focus can you have as we get more and more universal awareness? We're going to bring the arms slightly forward, and again, kind of hitchhiking that thumb up a little bit. You'll feel a little rotation happening in the arm, a little bit more stretch to the back of the shoulder. Couple of breaths there. And then bringing the arm behind, hitchhiking, kind of bringing that thumb up, bringing it back, opening up the front of the chest. We still have a little bit of side bend going on. We're just kind of playing with this space. What do we feel? What do we notice? And then again, just relaxing the arm, coming back to neutral. The last movement is just kind of warming up the spine. I'm going to take some twists here. Two options. One is to keep the hands kind of right in front of you at the heart. The other is to break the hands behind the head and get a little more shoulder action. Now, if this position is difficult for your shoulders, it's fine. One thing we want to make sure is if your arms are up here, you're not moving your elbow closer to you. You're going to keep the elbows just as wide out. Hands are here, same thing. The hands stay right in front of the heart. So either way is fine. I'm going to choose this one today. I'm going to keep those elbows back, and I'm just taking a twist. So thinking of that center channel, I'm spiraling around. I'm not bending forward or back. There's no side bending. I'm just rotating around that center channel. This is a really great time to take those breaths all the way from the knees to the nose. So maybe you inhale without arching the back, just drawing that breath all the way down. Exhale, a little squeeze from the knees up through the torso in this twist. Feel the muscles that are twisting, working with your breath. One more breath on this side. And then we're going to come back to the center and we'll switch sides. So again, elbows staying back or hands over the heart. Take your rotation. Notice if you've put any movement on that center channel, that center tube. We're just rotating around it. And once you're there, a few breaths. And again, you can absolutely work with the knee squeeze as your breath occurs. Lots to think about. Keep the focus. And when you've completed a few breaths, take the twist out, come on back, roll the shoulders out just a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and we're gonna work just a little bit, still seated with our hips. What I'd like to do is if you've got the ball or a blanket, sit it beside you. If you have a strap, we'll use this. If you're sitting on the floor, just make sure that your spine is comfortable on the floor. And this may be a time when you buff up to a chair if you need to, but I'm fishing for a foot and I'm just putting my strap over my foot. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just wrap my fingers around the strap so I have some good traction, and I'm just bringing my foot straight in front of me. And again, I'm gonna just turn sideways here. You don't have to turn. Notice what happens to your center channel. Notice if there's any changes. Try to keep it vertical. Create some traction through your leg. And I'm just pointing and flexing my foot a few times. Trying to just get a sense of the back of my knee, the hamstring. And I'm gonna find the ankle angle that is best for me, where I can feel the back of the knee. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just lift and lower that leg a few times. So now what I'm looking for is the sensation at the hip, that it's contracting when I lift it just a little bit. Sometimes it cramps. and that there's a little relaxation when I lower it. Not rocking my body, lifting and lowering my leg from the hip. So again, that center channel staying nice and firm. And just like I did with my foot position, I found where it was just the right amount of traction for me. I'm going to lift the leg to where there's just the right amount of contraction in the hip. And I'm going to take a couple of breaths. And even though I don't have the ball between my knees, I'm going to take that universal breath all the way through the center channel, down into my hip and knees, all the way up through my shoulders and head, and just any subtle sensation that you feel as you're holding your leg in this position with your breath. How can you support it? Right now we have the strap. What would happen in your mind's eye if you let go of the strap? Could you hold the leg in that position? And if you want to take it out of the mind's eye and into action, go ahead and take the strap off and then release it. Then we're going to stay with that same leg. And again, now I've turned sideways in the chair, and I suggest if you're in the chair to turn sideways. If you're standing, you can absolutely do the standing as well. I'm going to put the ball beneath my knee, and I'm just going to come now, same hip, into hip extension. So I'm rolling my knee back until my leg is vertical in alignment with my center channel. And I'm going to push down in that knee so I can feel active extension. So what was just contracting is now stretching. And what was stretching is contracting the back of my knee and the back of my hips. So again, I'm playing with position. I'm just going to roll that knee back and forth a few times. Feel the place where I feel just the right amount of sensation and awareness in my back, hip, and knee, and in the front hip stretch. And again, once there, taking a few breaths, noticing any subtle awareness. Notice the tendency to maybe arch your back rather than extend your hip. And just kind of gently work through it. And then we'll release. We're going to shift to the second side. So again, we're just going to take our first leg and fish for our second leg, sorry, and fish for the foot. Notice how you're sitting, making sure if you're sitting on the floor that there's a nice vertical center line in your body, that it's not rounded or uncomfortable. And we're going to bring that leg up into extension right in front of us. Once we're there, and again, I'll just turn a little sideways. Once we're there, aligning, and then again, just a little bit of rocking of the ankle. I've got some nice pull on my strap here. So as I'm rocking the ankle, I'm getting some resistance with this movement. Warming the ankle. And most people notice when the foot comes towards the shin, that's when the back of the knee is most stretched. So finding the place where it's just right, holding it there. And then starting to think about the hip. And I'm going to, with the assistance of my strap, lift and lower the leg just a little bit. And we're looking for the contraction in the front of the hip. Can we feel it? And finding the area that's just right. Of the back of the knee, of the front of the hip. Few breaths here. Think about that full channel breath from the knees to the nose. And how does this position feel? How does the breath help to support it? What else can you find? And in your mind's eye, maybe you begin to release the strap holding. Maybe you do more than mind's eye. And this leg, it's gonna drop. So I'm gonna just find a kind of nice neutral position where I'm supporting it just a little bit, but there's still the work happening. I'm not pulling on it fully. And this is my hip that's been injured, and it is shaking. It's working really hard. So it's not so much about what we see on the outside, but it's about what we can connect to and feel on the inside. After you've taken your breaths there, we're going to get ready for that hip extension. Again, this can be a lunge position standing, I'm going to do it from the chair. I've got the ball under my knee, and that just makes it really easy for me to roll it back and forth. But again, you can do this with a blanket or a pillow. Turning sideways so the leg can dangle underneath you, or coming into a standing lunge. And finding the hip stretch that's just right, that doesn't affect your spine. Once you're there, pressing into the ball a little bit, and maybe you just play with the smaller range of motion in this hip. And then once we've got that hip extension down and we've played with the contraction of the butt and the hamstring at the back of the leg, back of the knee, we'll pause, long center channel, few breaths. Notice being present in this position with your breath flowing through that center channel of energy within you. And then we'll relax this hip once we've kind of focused on it. I'm going to set the strap aside. Maybe keep your ball handy. We're going to come to a standing position. And if you need your chair for some balance, I'm just going to move back a little bit here so my head doesn't get cut off. If you need your chair for balance, that's absolutely fine. Use it to the side, or a wall will do. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to that gentle squeeze, and we're going to add what I call a hip lift, a little rocking of the pelvis with our breath. And going to be particular with the exhale. So as we're standing here, I've got the ball gently between my knees. I'm going to shift my weight a little bit towards a chair leg. So just see me shift over a little bit, but then I'm going to get really strong and extended in that leg. So again, back of the hip, front of the hip are engaged. And this leg is a little bit lighter. I'm going to try to align my center channel as much as I can with this hip. Now what I'm going to do is when I inhale, I'm going to soften the ball. Let this leg kind of land a bit. Exhale. Now I'm squeezing all the way from the foot coming up through the knees, through the center channel, up to the crown of the head. Inhale, flow, open, soften. Exhale, gently pull inward, upward, and list. We'll just take a few of these. So we're learning how to now connect fully to our standing leg, the one that isn't floating up and down, right? How do we pull into that standing leg as the other one leaves the ground? You'll feel a little bit of contraction through the pelvic floor as it comes into this more kind of diagonal relationship. And then we'll shift sides. So if you need to shift your chair over, that's fine, or turn. And again, the leg that's closest to the chair is going to be my standing leg. If it feels different for you to have support in a different place, that's fine. Begin to bear into the foot. Align your hip with your center line in your middle as much as you can. Right there, you'll feel kind of this lifting of your floater leg. Okay, and then as I inhale, softening just a bit, but not coming out of the posture, right? Just softening just a bit. And then exhale and pulling in and up all the way from the standing leg through. And again, you're just going to rock in and out of this. Finding the balance with your torso center through the center of your standing leg, and how that works at a diagonal between the two hip points. And one or two more. Awesome. Now we will be splitting our legs, so we can't really use the ball or the blanket anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin by facing the chair, right? So facing your chair and coming into a hip hinge forward fold. Right, so what we want to do is feel the weight in our heels. Knees straight if you can comfortably come into a straight knee. If you can't, maybe bring your hands up a little bit higher on the chair. You can even use the back of the chair for your hands if you need to. And let's just take a moment and just take those movements of the spine, kind of cat and cow, if you will. And you're noticing inside yourself the center channel. Now, rather than vertical with gravity, it's horizontal with gravity. And we want to find where is that horizontal line, or if our hands are a little higher, the angle to which we are accustomed to, right? So we're going to hold the spine long, long neck. Think about crown of head to tip of tailbone. And then we're going to kind of work a little bit on those shoulders, right? So maybe you bring an arm to reach by your ear. See if you can find particularly the back of that shoulder and work to hold that arm steady. If you feel like you need the other hand on your chair, otherwise you lose balance or don't feel comfortable, you'll just switch arms. If you feel like, oh, I can find the strength and I can take both arms off the chair, hold my position and breathe, you'll maybe take both arms off the chair. You don't have to. If you feel like maybe it's just better even to have a little touch on the back of the chair, that's awesome. One more breath here. And then let's go ahead and just for a moment, bring your hands back to the chair. Give your back a little bit of rest if you need to. We're going to step up with one leg and back with the other. So now we're in a straddle position. Feet should be comfortably straddled, but you know, some amount of challenge on the leg that's forward. You're going to feel that challenge in the back of the knee again. On the leg that's behind you, you might feel a little more challenge in the back of the ankle towards the Achilles tendon. So find where your foot can be comfortable, find the amount of split that feels right for you, and then begin to realign yourself with that center channel. There'll be a tendency here to have a side bend, that your side that is reaching back through the leg will be kind of longer, and the side that's forward, that hip will kind of want to come up, hike up, and shorten that side. So press your forward leg so that the hip is back. See if you can find that hip flexion at the front of the hip while you're extending. And in your mind's eye, even imagine that front leg, that you're lifting it from the floor, or try to lift it from the floor. See if you can find what work you need to do to stabilize and strengthen that hip. In this position, we're going to do the same work of slowly reaching one arm forward. Make sure you're grounded and strengthened through your legs. Again, you can play with the other hand coming down, or maybe both arms reaching forward. Couple of breaths. Notice if you react through your center. Can you keep those breaths going all the way from your knees to your nose? Hands can come down, give yourself a little break. We're going to bend that front knee for a moment, and we're going to come up slowly into an upright position. So here's that hip extension on the back leg. We did this in the chair, right? Watching the tendency to arch the back here, maybe even go ahead and bend that back knee, just like we were in the chair, so that the spine can be long. If you are able to play with bending and straightening that back knee, finding a little bit more hip extension, that's awesome. Until you find just the right amount. We're gonna bring those arms up alongside our ears again. Take a few breaths. And again, we're playing with the center radiating out, the breath being a part of our entire body. This is where breath becomes prana, more subtle or energy, not just the simple movement of air. From here, we're going to begin to reach forward. I'm going to just push my chair a little bit forward Now then, I've got that front knee still bent. I'm getting that nice, long, strong spine, and I'm just gonna see, can I take that back leg up off the floor? If you need to hang on to your chair, do so. Front hip is again working towards flexion, back leg extension. See if you can work between them, take a few breaths, imagine the ball between your knees, and as you exhale, you are squeezing through that center. Take one more breath here. We're going to just slowly bend the knee, come back to the back leg, step back with your front leg. Awesome. We're just going to tip that posture and just bring it here. So the leg that was behind you is going to be your standing leg. The leg that was forward to the chair is going to be your lifting leg. We're going to take that list, get stronger in your standing leg, begin to flex at your hip, flex at your knee, long, strong body. Again, just a balance in the standing pose. So you can imagine the strap around your toes. See if you can get that hip flexion. Take a few breaths. Arms can be alongside you. Arms can reach, oops, overhead. That's what threw me, right? Reaching overhead. So find your challenge point. Take a couple breaths. And then release. All right, so we're gonna just come into the second side. So this leg was my leg that was behind. It's gonna be my forward leg now. So I'm coming into that split position of my legs. Long spine. Again, you can absolutely play a little bit through cat and cow here. Also play with those side bends. Notice if your forward leg has a shorter side than the back leg. See if you can work towards stabilizing. Imagine the ball between your knees. Take a breath. Exhale. See if you can find that support through both your legs. Feet are nice and grounded. Strong center. Long spine eventually. And then we're going to play with the arm reach. See what it feels like to reach with one arm first. See if you can find the support in your shoulder to hold your body stable. Maybe play with the other arm. Maybe see, can you stabilize through your hips, that inner knee, inner channel, both arms forward. Now take a few breaths here. When you're ready, hands can come down. Good. Oh, we're going to bend that front knee and we're going to bring ourselves upright, right? So coming upright. Back leg, maybe the knee softens so that we can get our body upright and find that vertical relationship to gravity again. We're going to bend and straighten that back knee just a little bit, playing with hip extension that doesn't turn us or arch our back, but finding just the right amount of work here. Just the right amount of work here in this front leg. Finding balance, taking a few breaths, hip extension, slight hip flexion. The knee can be slightly bent. Maybe the arms come overhead for a moment. And then we're going to take our hip hinge as we come forward towards our chair. Again, you can use your chair for as much balance as you need to. We're going to begin to lift that back leg. See if you can hold that strong hip extension. Maybe you can straighten the front knee. Come into strong hip flexion here. Hands might stay on the chair. Hands might play with reaching overhead, finding that balance point, finding where you can be stable, strong, integrated, nice full breaths. We'll take a couple more of them. Nice. And then land. You can soften that front knee. So remember which leg is forward. We're going to come upright and we're going to step back. Back a little bit away from the chair. That forward leg is going to come forward again. The standing leg was the leg that was just behind you. Root down. Get that feeling of listing, of finding your alignment vertically now. And when you're ready, we're going to slowly bring this front leg back into flexion. And again, it may be, mine is definitely different on this side. So honoring the differences, finding your center. It doesn't really matter what it looks like from the outside. Go inside. What does it look like from the inside? Strengthen and support it. Breathe and use your breath to be a part of your posture. Arms can stay at the side or maybe reach overhead. A few breaths. And then release. We're going to come back into just that half forward fold just to kind of stretch and wiggle out. So using your chair, if you prefer to go to the ground, you can absolutely come all the way to the floor. I'm going to actually teach the rest of this class from the floor as we start to cool down. But feel free to stay with your chair if that feels right for you. And you can just take any movements that feel good, some cat and cow movements if that feels right for you. I'm going to do just a little bit of work into a downward facing dog here. So it's the same work we've been doing. We're just flipping our relationship to gravity a little bit more towards an inversion. Your arms can be so that your hands are a little bit forward of your shoulders. See if you can find that long spine. And what we're going to do is we're going to just actually land on our elbows for just a moment. So hands are a little forward of the shoulders, elbows are right under the shoulders, long spine. And all we're going to do is we're going to kind of seesaw our bodies, pushing forward and back. Okay, pushing back, a little deeper hip hinge. Pulling forward, a little bit more shoulder work, particularly the back of the shoulders. So we're playing with that shifting movement. And maybe this is where it's best for you to stay. This is good work. Maybe you take those elbows back over or back off the floor and you push and pull with straighter arms. You can get a little more forward pull here and maybe a little stronger push back. As you pull forward, the hips become more extended. Can you find the work at the back of the butt, back of the thighs? As you push back, can you find the work at the front of the hips? And then finally, the last option is to turn your toes under, and as you push back, we're coming into that half forward fold. As you pull forward, we're coming into plank, which is just like standing. Strong hips, strong shoulders, push back, hinge at the hips, downward facing dog. Pull forward, straight long spine, take a breath. Let's just take maybe one more of these. This can absolutely be done just pushing and pulling from the chair. And then when you're ready, knees come down, press back, elbows come down, but this time flip your palms up. And if you need to take your knees a little wider so you can sit back and stretch, rest your head, take a few breaths, notice how you feel. And then come into whatever position feels like the most natural, easy position you would like to get into. If you're still in a chair, you can sit back in the chair. If you're on the floor, maybe you'd like to sit but also can choose to just lay down and come onto your back into Shavasana, or that pose of repose that's done traditionally at the end of our yoga classes. Take a few moments, be particular. I'm choosing a seated posture, but I also put myself up a little bit on a bit of a bolster so that I'm really comfortable in the seat. And if you are in a seated posture, feel free to do a cross-legged position, legs out in front. You can come to more of a bound ankle position where your feet are together. Find what seems to be just right for you. We slowly built a lot of energy, starting with just finding kind of that core, that center channel resource of energy, but eventually spreading it out to our entire body, and probably feeling the heat of that energy, or maybe the vibration of the energy. Sometimes some people feel this as a kind of light, almost a humming sound perhaps. As you become quiet, just notice that. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. We're just feeling the residual energy pulsating through us. This is prana. Prana is the life force. It's associated with our breath, because if we didn't have breath, we wouldn't have life. But it's so much more than just breath. It is every cell in your body vibrating with life. Cellular respiration. It is the area around you where your breath and your voice influences space. And we're being reminded daily right now during COVID-19 that we occupy a great deal of space with our energy. Somewhere around 6 feet. Imagine this circle, a circumference around you of 6 feet from your center. And imagine that not just in a horizontal plane, but 6 feet over your head, 6 feet under your hips, 6 feet to the front of you, 6 feet to the back of you. You're resting in this bubble of energy that is your prana. And then I invite you to begin to explore the source of that prana. We've been observing it through our breath, observing it through our movements and how we feel it in our bodies as a universal force. Now we're observing it in the more subtle after effect of those movement practices, and in that visualization of the bubble around us. But our observation itself is prana. The capacity to have consciousness is prana. So where's the source of that energy? If our center core was plugged in somewhere to create this energy, where would it be plugged in? What's the source that comes before the observation? And no matter what our orientation to source is, however we might define it, and of course it's ineffable because it's not present in this bubble of our awareness. But no matter how we categorize, name, or imagine that source, it is unlimited, eternal, available to every living cell, structure, being, universal, the prana of planetary orbits, of galaxies in space. How would you infuse your bubble of being and take that eternal, beautiful source of energy deeply into the center of your being? Supplying every need, nourishing every cell, providing radiance. And feel free to stay in this meditation and absorb this energy for as long as feels right. Taking your time, being present, contemplating. It is your life force, and it is your birthright. Take it in deeply, fully.